Welcome aboard, everybody. Manchild Show with Board Green Digital at MC Show Digital. We are talking NBA today. That's why you see this guy from Heavy Sports right there, Sean Deveney, joining me. I thought we were going to give him a little vacation, but, the NBA draft, a couple of trades, all kinds of crazy stuff happening in the NBA. And so we could not go another week without having our usual chat with Sean. So, Sean, we hope to get you some vacay here in the near future. But the NBA, it kind of has its own timeline, so to speak. By the way, we are presented today by Northeast Roofing Professionals. Today's video is brought to you by our friends at Bayberry Automotive, integrity in everything. And we will hear a little bit more from our friends at Bayberry in just a little bit. Sean, I want to start today's conversation by asking you about what I think is the worst rule in all of the NBA, okay? And I'm not talking replay. I'm not talking charge block. I'm not talking any of that stuff. I'm talking about that dopey apron system, or as it is now known, never cross over the second apron, which my owner, Knicks owner James Dolan, said he will not do during this offseason. Meanwhile, the Knicks have 5 players, including 2 very important players, Mitchell Robinson and Landry Shamet, who were pivotal pieces to their NBA championship run, not under contract, and thus free agents. And this becomes incredibly problematic. We've talked about this a lot, not just because the Knicks are on the radar this year. We've talked about it last year with the Celtics and what they had to do to dismantle their roster. And now the same thing's happening to the Knicks. How does the NBA look at this second apron thing and think this is a good idea? You basically are taking a defending champion, all right, and saying, yeah, you got to break up the band and kind of retool it because we can't let you put all these pieces together. Give me your thoughts on this whole second apron thing and why the NBA has gone to this rule, which I think is the worst rule in basketball.
All right. Well, I think there's 2 separate conversations to have here. One is what the Knicks are doing, which is, you can look at the Celtics, and the Celtics won it in 2024 and ran the team back, and they were in the second apron that next year in 24-25.
They are one of the few that actually was willing to go over.
And they were willing to go over it because you can keep your team together and go into the second apron. You got to pay the taxes. It's a financial thing. The thing that you're limited on, though, is that you can't make any real moves. Your flexibility is really limited, but you can bring back the same roster. So
trades are out, being active at the deadline is out, all that kind of stuff. Go on.
Right. But if you're confident in the team that just won the championship, conceivably, you should be confident just bringing that team back, and it's going to cost you. You've got to pay, but it's not. It really doesn't hurt you. So. I don't want to let Dolan off the hook here because he could easily bring this team back. And then it's a financial thing. It's going to be very expensive. It's going to cost, that roster with the taxes is going to be up around, $350 million. And that obviously as an owner, you don't want to do, but if you just won a championship and you own, the second most valuable entity in the NBA, you should probably go and pay it and bring the team back. So I don't want to let Dolan off the hook. They can bring all these guys back. It's just that he is choosing not to. So that's on him. But in general, once you get past sort of that first year, you don't want to be in the second apron multiple years, then it really hurts. And then you've got to find ways to get under that. And that's where the Celtics were. And the NBA sees it as, sort of redistributing players and spreading out talent and having parity. And I've never liked it. I think, if you've got a champion, let them defend it and let them defend it for 3 or 4 years. I thought the heyday of the league was always, Michael Jordan and Lakers Celtics and things like that. You're basically ruining that and saying that teams can't do that. And I don't like that. But that's how the league sees it, and they want to try to give smaller markets, and there's all sorts of reasons for it. But in the end, I think it winds up hurting everybody. And if you've got the Knicks, that's not a small market, and the Celtics, can't keep the team together because of the second apron. Then what are you really doing here?
Sean, I read a compelling story this morning by Fred Katz, who writes for The Athletic, and it was all about the Knicks situation and this second apron. And he said exactly what you said. James Dolan has the power to bring back every single one of these guys. He can bring back Shamet, Robinson, Clarkson. The whole crew can come back, okay? But he'll be over the second apron, and depending on what they end up paying those individuals, now he gets whacked for a tax. Call it a luxury tax, whatever you want to call it. It's a bonus. He has to pay the NBA money, essentially, to keep his guys, which, again, I think this is the stupidest rule in the history of mankind. All right. Now, that number for James Dolan can be anywhere, according to Katz, anywhere from like $50 to $150 million. So it's not like small potatoes. I know these guys are billionaires and they make all kinds of money. And as you just said, the Knicks, arguably one of the most valuable franchises out there right now. But the fact of the matter, it's still, $150 million is a lot of money, man. That is still a lot of cheese for someone to just cut a check and just like, hey, to keep my roster together, here you go. Plus, if, let's just say like both your centers went down to injury. Now the Knicks have no recourse to do anything other than to look at their G League team and their roster and bring guys from their farm system or from the actual roster to play center when they don't really have more than two centers, at least serviceable ones. I know Huck Porty is still on the roster, but you wouldn't want him starting every day for you. You wouldn't be a very effective team at center. So I still think there are inherent problems, but you're right to say it. And Fred Katz's article is a really, really good one. I'll see if I can put a link, folks, for those of you that are watching this video. I'll try to put the link to that Athletic article below in our comments so that if you want to check it out. I read it this morning. It's a really well-written article, and it helped me understand the lawyerliness of the second apron, which makes me sick, that fans like myself should have to become lawyers or to have somebody that lawyerly skills explain to me what exactly is going on here. What is this? What am I signing here? Am I signing my life, or am I just saying, hey, I'm just going to do this simple task?
Yeah.
So,
but the thing is, though, the thing where I push back is, we've had teams that have paid the luxury tax forever, and that's part of the. I mean, the Warriors paid it over and over and over again when they were winning championships. They paid a lot of money for that. So you get the $150 million tax, and that just goes back to the NBA and gets redistributed to other teams. So it is kind of a double whammy. Not only am I paying, not only is this money coming out of my pocket, but it's going into my competitor's pocket. So it's that's something that no owner likes to do. But if you got a chance to win every year, then, there's been plenty of franchises that have gone out and paid the tax. The Clippers have done it for years and they stink. They don't go anywhere. The Cavaliers are in the second apron. And I keep saying they've got to make something. They've got to change something. They keep saying we're not going to do that. And it's just like, I don't understand. You have to be able to give yourself some leeway to make. But, so you get these teams that are willing to pay it. I just don't see why the Knicks of all franchises should not be willing, after a 53-year drought, to have the owner 4 days later say, "Nah, I'm not paying to keep this team together." That was almost offensive to me, Jim. It was offensive because come on, you waited this long, you had there's so much good feeling, and you're going to come out and say something like that.
Right. And that's James Dolan to a T. And it's why, in my opinion, he's among, if not the worst owner in sports. All right. We may have won a championship this year. And certainly James Dolan's money had something to do with that. After all, we needed somebody to come up with all that money to pay all the players and to take care of all the things that need to be taken care of economically. But he always sticks his foot in his mouth. He always does dopey things. He embarrasses the organization time and time again. And to me, it's always like, and the players, of course, at the end of it all have to stand at that podium when they're getting the championship. And we'd like to thank James Dolan. And I got to imagine, that Jalen Brunson, or I don't want to put him under the fire here or into the fire here. But, that a lot of those players must be saying it and going, roll of the eyes. Give me a break. This guy does nothing but get in our way. The one good thing he's done is he's given control, at least of player personnel and player moves, to Leon Rose and to Wesley Worldwide West. Okay. And those two guys have done a really, really good job and deserve all of the credit for putting this roster together, for making the coaching change, so on and so forth. But Dolan always finds a way to mess it all up. So,
yeah. And you're right. You have to give them credit. But I will also say that they were surprised to find out, I was just reading today, that they were surprised to find out that they weren't going to be able to go over the second apron. They had, but because I had always heard that, okay, you win a championship with New York, then Dolan's going to step back and open that was the assumption that they had in the front office. And now it comes out that they had no idea. That was their assumption too. And now it's so look, they're going to have about $15 million. And so you have to decide, all right, well, where do you spend it? Do you spend it on Jose Alvarado? Do you spend it on Landry Shamet? You can probably keep him. But then you've still got some other spots you got to fill out. So, I don't know how much you can realistically pay him. And if you're going to try to keep Mitchell Robinson, you can't. You can't do it. So
I think
so they have to decide how to manage those three guys.
I think Robinson is likely, if Dolan sticks to this creed, then Robinson is likely going to be the biggest casualty. I do think they could try to keep both Shamet and Alvarado, and I think both of those guys were really, really key, and they also are key to giving Jalen Brunson the proper rest that he needs. I don't think, unfortunately, I like Jordan Clarkson. I really like what he did with the Knicks, but I don't know that they could bring him also. It might just be those two guys, and then you stay where you are, and then maybe there's a trade at the trade deadline or something else that you need to do, in order to, refortify your center position or something. I certainly wouldn't trust Karl Anthony Towns to be the one and only. I mean, him and Huck Porty are going to be, center and backup. Boy, that's not a very – I know Robinson is a shaky proposition to begin with in terms of his health and all that kind of stuff and all the rest he requires, but he's still, when he's in there, an extremely effective player, who alters the course of a game. You got to put up with the free throw nonsense, which, again, we got to see that again in the NBA Finals and in the NBA playoffs, the Hacker Robinson coming into play. So I guess the Knicks would expunge themselves from that, but still, it's tricky business. But that would be the way that I would go if Dolan sticks to his guns. But you're right to say it. Why is he sticking to his guns? Why does he come out and ruin the party, essentially? They have a great parade, the Canyon of Heroes, and then, 2 days later, that apron, we got to stay underneath that thing. So don't start asking me about Mitchell Robinson and Landry Shamet, because we're not going to be able to sign those guys. I mean, he didn't come out and say that, but that's kind of what he was saying, which is really obviously aggravated Knicks fans. But we're still basking in the glow, so let us continue.
And hey, look, he could change his mind. He could, as you mentioned, there's a chance that, especially Leon Rose, he's got a lot of faith in Leon Rose for obvious reasons, that Leon Rose said, look, let's do this.
This is the best
cost this, but next year we can maybe do this, this, and this and get out of it.
That there's a way to get out of it after 1 year. Maybe Dolan will get on board with that. Sometimes he just likes to be blustery and posture and so on and so forth. All right, let's get away from the Knicks because there was a lot of action this week, Sean, in the NBA in terms of obviously the NBA draft. We'll get to that at the end, but trades. So finally, the Giannis trade did go through. Let's start with that one because that's been out there and it finally happens. Give me a quick evaluation on the trade and who do you think won this trade if either team won the trade?
Yeah, I mean, it's no question Miami wins this trade. I thought Milwaukee did as well as it could in terms of getting back some young assets, some draft picks and things like that. But when you look at what the package was, it is not, I mean, the Knicks gave up a better package for Bridges. The Grizzlies got a better package for Desmond Bane. This is a lesson to all teams that if you've got a guy and you can see something coming where you're not going to be able to keep him, trade him quickly. Don't wait. And that's what happens too often. That's what happened with the Bucks. And really they paid the price. I thought they did as well as they could, but no question they could have done better if they acted last summer, which is probably when they should have done this.
Okay. All right. Other big trades were made, Sean. I mean, pick your poison here. I mean, there was some big moves in the NBA. Pick one that you liked.
Well, the LaMelo Ball thing was really stunning because it just the word just kind of leaked late on Wednesday, and then by the time it was lunch on Thursday, he was gone. And that I just talked about how much we dragged out the Giannis thing. Like we had no time to drag out the LaMelo thing. It was literally like an 8-hour turnaround. It was unbelievable. But I think that's I understand what Charlotte was doing. I understand where they're going, but I think that's a good deal for Minnesota. That they had to do something with limited assets to be able to come up with a guy like LaMelo Ball, who you can criticize for a number of things, but I think he'll be much better in that system. I think Chris Finch is a really good coach. I think playing with Anthony Edwards is going to help him. I think they'll play faster. I think that, they had to do something, and this was something that I think was pretty productive for them.
Now, they gave up Naz Reid. I know a lot of people like him, all right? And, so now what do they just have Rudy Gobert kind of, manning the center? Is there a big gaping hole there? You think they can get by without those guys?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that they're going to have to find a way to fill in for him. But, Naz Reid was sort of a sign and develop guy. He did not come in as a big star. So I think they feel like that's a spot where we need a guy who play some defense, get rebounds, and throw some elbows. And we've got a better chance of finding somebody like that at a cheap price than we do, finding a talent like LaMelo Ball. So yeah, no question, it hurts. And he's a very, very popular player in Minnesota, and that hurts as well. But to bring in a guy like Ball, that's going to really help them.
Talking with Sean Deveney, Heavy.com, our NBA insider. It's the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. You see it right there. That's our YouTube link, youtube.com/@MC Show Digital. If you're not already a subscriber, click that subscribe button. We'd love for you to become part of our growing family. And if you already are, you can become a member and just click that thumbs up like as you're coming into the video as well. That helps get our video out to more and more people. We are presented by Northeast Roofing Professionals. Today's video brought to you by our friends at Bayberry Automotive. Just take a moment here from our sponsors. We're back. When we return, we'll talk about the fate of Jaylen Brown. Oh, I wish my colleague was along for this ride. We'll talk about whether or not he's staying or going from Boston. That when we return. Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital rolls on right after this.
Finding the right local roofing company can be tricky. You don't want to hire the wrong roofers, or you could end up spending a fortune on repairs. The pros at Northeast Roofing Professionals can ensure your home is protected by a strong and sturdy roof. Locally owned and operated, over 30 years experience, free estimates, and competitively priced. Don't settle for an inexperienced roofing contractor. Turn to Northeast Roofing Professionals. Discounts for military and first responders. Reach out and let them put a sturdy roof over your head. NERPCNY.com. NERPCNY.com.
Trust is everything when it comes to auto repairs. At Bayberry Automotive, they take trust seriously. Bayberry has a team of experienced and certified mechanics that are dedicated to providing exceptional customer service. And Bayberry stands behind its work with an exceptional 5-star rating from its many satisfied customers. Family run, integrity in everything. Bayberry Automotive, BayberryAutomotive.com.
Located on Route 57 across from Bayberry Plaza, the premier choice for auto repair in Liverpool.
And Bayberry now with a second location on Morgan Road in Liverpool. Go see our friends at Bayberry Automotive. Integrity in everything, and they live by that creed. All right, we are talking with Sean Deveney, Heavy.com, our NBA insider. Next topic, Sean. What's going on in Beantown, man? I was just up there just a weekend ago, man. This Jaylen Brown thing. So Jaylen Brown was apparently put on the trade block and has been put on the trade block. And it looked like the Celtics were very, very close. One of two finalists, it appeared, to get Giannis and ship off Jaylen Brown. Well, obviously that doesn't go their way. Pat Riley and the Miami Heat start throwing more and more into the pile. And as a result, Miami ends up getting Giannis. And now Jaylen Brown is still in Boston. And so how serious is this situation? Is he definitively going to be gone here, Sean? Or is there any way that that Brad Stevens and this hierarchy can repair this relationship, which seems like in a blink of an eye, in a comment in a podcast, has suddenly become toxic? Like, I don't understand it. Like, I know Jaylen Brown said that thing about this was his favorite season ever, but I mean, do those words on a podcast have to like become this whole like, wedge between him and the team? Is this real? Is he really going to be shipped off? Give me your take.
Yeah, so you're certainly hitting on something, but I think what you're hitting on is that he has let the team know that he'd be okay with being traded, and the team is now looking and seeing, okay, well, if we're going to do that, then let's see what's out there. And Brad Stevens said this the other night, and I think it kind of gets overlooked. Is that he was asked, can you definitively say Jaylen will be back? And he didn't say yes. So everybody took that and said, oh, they're going to trade him. But what Brad Stevens also said is that we're in constant contact. I spoke with him just a week ago. I spoke to his agent like 2 days ago. They know what's going on. Everybody knows what's going on. And when you have a situation, when you've got a star player and you're looking to trade him, as long as you keep the guy in the loop and the guy's okay with being traded and you're saying, well, this is what we're being offered, we don't think that's enough. Would you want to go here? What about there? Jaylen Brown's due an extension. So he's, again, it's sort of like Giannis. He has a little bit of say in where he might go. The team and him are in complete conversation here, and as long as they stay in conversation, then, if nothing works out, he's going to show up in training camp and come back and play for the Celtics. But if there's something that comes up where he can kind of be the guy, which is clearly what he would like, then he's going to go somewhere else. And so, I think the idea that this is all confrontational, I think that's sort of been overblown. I think that, this is just a team looking for, is there a way to upgrade? And for Jaylen Brown to say, is there some place that would be better for me?
This is a guy that was an MVP candidate this past year. This is a guy that's proven he can be a number one. Sounds like he enjoyed being a number one while Jason Tatum was out. But I thought all these guys are wired to win championships. Does Jaylen Brown have any idea what it would like to say be on the Brooklyn Nets right now, or the Sacramento Kings, or whoever you want to pick that's been a perennial bottom dweller in recent years? Does he know what that feeling's like? Because things are pretty nice and cushy, dare I say, in Beantown compared to some of those franchises, my friend.
Yeah, and it's kind of like he's had a backwards career because he came in and they were good right from the beginning. They were good starting in, once they got Al Horford in 2016, just before that, actually 2015, they started to play really well, and they've been perennially, a championship contender. So he's never played on a team where he was the number one guy, and maybe winning 50 games the way they did last year is a real accomplishment, a feather in your cap. That usually it works the other way, right? Like a guy plays for a bad team, and then you get to a point and you're like, I want to go somewhere I can win. Jaylen Brown's he's played for a good team, and now he's like, I want to go somewhere I can lose, But the reason is because he does want to, I think he really did enjoy the aspect of leadership, of having his voice be the main one in the locker room, and helping a lot of these young guys, Hugo Gonzalez and Jordan Walsh, and a lot of the young guys who played really well with the Celtics. I think he liked being that, having that leadership role, and he knows that once Jason Tatum comes back, that all gets diminished. So that's sort of his outlook on this.
Yeah, that's surprising. Most of these guys are all chasing rings. This guy just wants to be admired by his team.
Well, I think the other thing too, though, is that does this team, as it stands, especially after we watch what the Celtics did in the playoffs, is this really a championship team?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I don't think so. So that's part of this thinking as well.
All right, let's talk NBA draft. It did happen this week. Boy, I usually get so hyped for the draft. It's usually a big production. And this was a good draft top to bottom with some really good guys at the top of the draft. And yet, Sean, it seemed to kind of play a little muted. It didn't really seem to have quite the buzz that it should have. Did you feel the same thing? You agree with that comment? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I thought that that all the trade stuff sort of sapped the draft a little bit. I think that that certainly helps. I thought too that Davansa and Darren Peterson. Darren Peterson had such a weird year. And Davansa was playing at BYU, and that's not exactly a glamour program. So, these weren't guys that we watched all year. It wasn't like, when Zion Williamson came in, a certain flag. Obviously Boozer was up at the top, but, even that, he was going to be number 3. Everybody knew he was going to be number 3. So I think that was part of it, that the players themselves weren't, people that weren't guys that average people, that average fans, casual fans, really had glommed onto. So, I think there was a little less anticipation because of that as well.
Let me ask you about, you mentioned those 3 guys. So let's start there. The 3 guys at the top of the draft. How many guys do you think, and include those 3, if you will, could, and I know this is, we're crystal balling it here and we don't know. But from what you've seen from their college careers, what you know about the NBA and prospects, how many star players do you think are going to come out of this draft? Because the thought was there were 3 right at the top, and those 3 guys, a lot of people thought they were interchangeable. Whether you took them 1, 2, or 3, you were getting a really good guy. They all have different nuances to who they are. I think Davansa was the safest pick, and I would have taken him if I were sitting at number 1 also. Peterson, I don't know. I just wouldn't have wanted to touch him. I understand how skilled he is, but everything that happened last year just scares the you-know-what out of me. Yeah. Obviously Boozer is a household name, and he's going to be a very good player, if not a superstar player. I think he's guaranteed to be a very good player. Give me your thought about the top of this draft and how many superstars you think may come out of it. Was it the draft that everybody keeps saying that it is?
Yeah, and I would throw Caleb Wilson in there as well. It needs some development time, but I had one scout tell me he's a more athletic Chris Bosh, and that's pretty good. If Chris Bosh is a Hall of Famer. Now, I did say he's got to put in a lot of work to get there. It's not he's a little less ready-made than some of the other guys, but out of those four guys, if you get three sort of stars, I think that would not be out of the realm of possibility. You get three sort of superstar caliber players out of that group, sort of like you go way back to the Dwayne Wade draft and the Chris Bosh and LeBron. Yeah, I mean, you go way back to that kind of draft. It could be that sort of thing where you wind up getting at least three stars, and then you look at the guards, and there's Wagler and Acuff and Brown. You figure at least one of those guys is going to be a hit as well. So now you're up to four stars, and then you're probably going to have at least one of the guys who went lower. Whether it's a Cameron Carr, who I really liked, and he slipped pretty far to Philadelphia. He could be one of those guys. It could be Burries. A lot of people liked. You go right down, and one of those guys is probably going to hit as well. So now you're talking about probably 5, maybe 6 like legitimate stars coming out of this draft. I think it is that good of a crew here that we had this year, this past week.
A lot of people intrigued that Brooklyn passed or didn't take Acuff and instead took Brown. And you mentioned those guards. Acuff has been compared to Allen Iverson, which are big shoes to fill. He's a quick guy, a little guy. Give me your thoughts on those top tier guards, and who do you think has the right skill set to make it in the NBA as a big time player?
Yeah, I mean, Acuff is there's scouts that love him, and there's scouts that just look at him and. If you put Allen Iverson in today's NBA, he would not be Allen Iverson. He just wouldn't have a place. He's too inefficient. He makes bad decisions. He needs the ball all the time. And that's sort of where Acuff is, doesn't play defense. And to have a guy like that, I think it's very, very risky. Obviously the scoring is there. Bold scorer, can shoot, can spread the floor and all that, but needs the ball in his hands an awful lot. And one of those guys, you kind of got to build your team around him. So he winds up in Sacramento. We'll see how that goes. But, I think that was the thinking on him. Whereas Brown, Wagler's more of a traditional point guard, big, probably a guy who's not going to be a superstar, but it can be a very, very good point guard for a long time. And plays both ways and certainly has scoring ability. No question. We saw that in the second half of the year. So he'd be up there as well. Brown is a bit of a wild card. He had a little bit of an injury problem at Louisville, but he's a guy who, when he's on, he can be really, really devastating. He's got good length. He can develop into a pretty good defensive player, they think. And certainly he's got the size to play both guard positions as well. So I think that was the thinking for Brooklyn, is that when you look at today's NBA, that Brown just fits better than Acuff does.
So I think it's safe to say, we'd be okay saying this, Sean, that Becky Hammon would not take Acuff, would she? She doesn't like small guards. Talk to me a little about that. This was an interesting little thing. This is something she said apparently 2 years ago. I didn't know the comments were that old, that she wouldn't build her franchise. I think I'm summarizing here a little bit. Correct me if I get any of it wrong. That she wouldn't build her franchise around a smaller guard, that she doesn't think that that's the way to go. And yet here we have Jalen Brunson, essentially the star of the Knicks, a smaller guard, bringing the Knicks to prominence and now bringing them the championship that they haven't had in 53 years. So those comments were regurgitated. And then I guess she was re-asked about, do you still feel the same way now that Jalen Brunson's done his thing? And she doubled down and said, yes, I do. Yeah. He's an outlier. And there are other outliers. Isaiah Thomas, I think she named another 1 or 2 people as well along the precipice who have won titles. But she said, I still stick to my guns, that I wouldn't do that. I think that's the awkward way, essentially putting words in her mouth to do it. What did you think about what Becky Hammon said? I mean, this is a woman who's a WNBA coach who many think might eventually be the first woman coach in the NBA if she wants to go that way. And here she is kind of stirring it up, dare I say, by doubling down off the Brunson championship. Give me a thought.
It was interesting that I found it interesting that, it was a 2-year-old comment, like you say. And what she said is not different than, I've heard, countless NBA analysts to say this, some former players as well,
No
say,
doubt.
you can't win with the little guy. I mean, Paul Pierce was saying it, right? Or Kevin Garnett, that, hey, look, you can't win that way. You can't win that way. You can't win that way. But of all the comments that got raised again, it was Becky Hammon. Like, I don't know why somewhere along the line, it was chosen to be her who's going to be the one who's, I don't know why that was, but she's right. I mean, look, it's not you just look at history. There's not a lot of ways and not a lot of times in the history of the league that you've been able to build a team around a small point guard. But the Knicks did it, and credit to them. But if you want to start to build a championship right now, that's probably not where you would start.
You want to know an interesting thought of that? As that all went down, Sean, and I was thinking about that, it was 2 years ago. I come to find that out, so on and so forth. Right. As you said, many people have said similar things, if not the same thing. None of those people are being quoted, right? We're going to go to, a coach in the WNBA's comments from 2 years ago and try and build a case around this and say, you're so wrong, right? Because look at what Jalen Brunson just did. My thought was, I wonder, in this world of athletes and coaches controlling their own narrative, putting out things that they want to be put out there, that Becky Hammon's agent didn't say, Becky, let's float this back out there and, answer it however you want, but you're definitely going to get asked the question. If I push this back out there to reporters, they're going to raise it. They're going to write stories about it. Then they're going to get asked about it again. And guess what, Becky? This gets you kind of back in the NBA circle, dare I say. No one's talking about Becky Hammon in NBA world right now. She's a WNBA coach who's supposedly very happy over there. But if she really wants to get her skin back in the game here, so to speak, Sean, this wouldn't be a bad way to do it. Suddenly she's back on the radar of the NBA. I mean, I find it kind of genius if indeed that's the way it was constructed.
You are so cynical, man.
Could be, though. Could be. I'm telling you, man. Cynical I might be, but a realist I also am. Sean.
Right? Yeah. Sure. No. You might be dead on, because there is a real mystery. Like say, why her out of everybody who said this? But maybe it was encouraged, and certainly that's it's gotten her name back out there. No question about it.
All right, let's end it today with way too early prediction. I mean, we just got through the draft, so I guess we know a little bit about the draft. But other than that, lots of moves I'm sure still to be made. Lots of roster decisions still to be made. People dealing with their apron situations, as my Knicks are. Who do you like to win the NBA championship next year?
I would go back to the Thunder, and that's boring, I know, but I just think that having gotten bloodied a little bit. Don't forget they had two major injuries, certainly one major injury. You could argue that Mitchell was a major injury, but they certainly had their number two guy was out, and they still took San Antonio to 7 games. I think they're going to reconfigure things a little bit. I think they'll come back a much more focused and just as ready team to win a championship. I think the way the things played out so far for the Knicks been pretty good. Nothing. I think the worst thing would have been Giannis getting traded to Boston. I think that would have made the Celtics, would have brought them right back into contention. Not that afraid of him in Miami with the roster that they've got. So, I think that everything is kind of played out the way for the Knicks. Are you that afraid of the Pacers coming back with Halliburton? I'm not. Are you that afraid of the Cavaliers? I'm not. So you go right down. Detroit's having issues with Jalen Duren, and as you go right down, they could afford to lose a couple of their guys. I think they'd probably still be favorites as long as they keep that core together.
Mm-hmm. So perhaps Knicks back in the NBA Finals, but he's not picking them to win. He's going with the Thunder. No. I can't say that I blame him. Sean Deveney, always good to catch up with you, my friend. Thanks for dishing with us today.
Thank you.